Hey everyone, and welcome to Winning Chess Tactics. So this short video is from a game that was played very recently between Maxime Vacher-Lagrave against Ian Nepomniachtchi in the Paris Rapid and Blitz tournament. And basically this game was one that really went up and down. Black was winning, then White fought his way back, and then suddenly after a mistake it was White who was winning. Now since this is Winning Chess Tactics, I'm going to get straight to the puzzle position I have for you, where in this position Nepomniachtchi played the move Rook takes f2, and then after Rook takes f2, and the move Knight takes f2, since obviously Bishop f2 is not possible due to the pin. Well, now we have our puzzle position, where if you find the right move here as White, as MVL did, then your opponent will resign on the spot, and you win the game. So, are you up to the task? Let's find out. What would you play here as White? Do let me know your move in the comments below, and if you are enjoying this video so far, make sure to hit that like button and definitely consider subscribing, especially if you are new to my channel. And this is the obligatory moment where you can pause the video if you need more time to think about this position. No shame in that. Okay, so this is one of these positions that once you see what the winning move is, it just becomes clear that, okay, this is obviously the way to play it. So congratulations if you came up with the move Knight to d7. So why is it that Knight d7 is winning, and why did Nepomniachtchi resign here? Well, the first point to note is that none of Black's discovered checks really do anything. If you play... actually, I'm going to start with the obvious Rook takes Knight. That's probably the bigger question you guys have, right? So Rook takes d7. The idea is that we now play Queen to f8 check. And we use the fact again that the bishop is pinned, so Black can't take the queen. And if you play Queen to d8, well, we just play Rook takes c5 and give a very swift checkmate, as it were. Obviously, the bishop is covering over here. And if they play the better defensive Rook to d8, well, really it doesn't matter that much, because you go Rook takes c5, and Black is forced to part with the queen, which is a decisive loss of material, because playing King c7 instead will run into Queen to f7 checkmate. So, given that the Knight can't be taken by the Rook, what does that leave Black with instead? Well, it turns out that the discovered checks for the Knight aren't a big help either. Let's say you play Knight d3, for example. Well, in this case, this move would actually be winning for Black if it wasn't for the counter check Rook takes c5. Just an absolute hammer blow, checking the king, leaving that queen undefended to an attack. So that is a move Knight c5 doesn't help because we just take... and then we give checkmate on c7. Whereas if you take with the queen, it's the same problem. Knight takes and queen c7 mate is on the agenda. So given that knight d3 doesn't really work, what else is there? If you play knight e4, it's a similar problem. Just rook takes c5 and the same idea that we saw beforehand. And if you play knight h3, which at least is a double check, so that you can't play rook takes c5 when the king is still in check, well, you just move the king away with king g2. And it turns out that Black just has nothing here. Knight f4 check, we simply take it. Queen takes b2, we simply take the queen. And if you do play rook takes d7, just queen f8. And once again, we see that this is completely buried for Black. That, as we saw before, White will either win the queen, or he will give checkmate with king d7, queen to f7. So that's the winning chess tactic, and I could stop here. But actually, I want to give you guys a bonus challenge, where you can test yourself to see if you can play better than the World Championship contender Ian Nepomniachtchi, who you may know is playing a World Championship match against Magnus Carlsen later in 2021. So if we go back to this position, we have already seen that the move Rook takes f2 is unfortunately the decisive mistake. But that then bodes the question of what should Black do instead. So let's now also test your defensive skill. So that's what makes this video special. I'm not just showing you the winning chess tactic, I'm showing you how to avoid the winning chess tactics of your opponent as well, because being a very good defender in chess is what separates the good players from the true greats. Because anyone can find a good move when the position is easy to play, but it's not always so easy to find a good move when the position is hard to play. That's why it's good to train these uncomfortable positions and be able to play them well too. With that spiel on the power of defense shared with you, what would be your defense here with Black to play? And this one, if you're serious about improving, you'll definitely want to pause the video and think about it a bit. Because if a Nepo could get it wrong, then it shows how hard it is. And for those of you who are sitting back with your cold beverage, just enjoying the show, well, let's get on with the solution. So let's say you play a move like rook f5, for example. Now that would be a move that would be almost okay, except the move b4 is a very strong reply. And if you take that pawn with the queen, you get hit by knight d3, threatening mate, threatening the queen at the same time, also defending f2 as an added bonus. And after queen to b6 and knight takes c5, white is just completely winning here. Because if you play knight takes c5, white will just go queen d4 and simply win the piece and have a decisive attack to follow, as black has no good way to defend the knight from the pin. And if you try something tricky like rook g5 to win the queen, it's all well and good, but after takes, white can also win black's queen with knight a4, discovering a attack like this, and after queen c6, white can just take, and white is up maybe only a bishop for 3 pawns, but the bishop is a lot better than the 3 pawns here after king g2, as the knight has a beautiful outpost to blockade the passed pawns. The rook can come in to attack. So while white only has a small material advantage, technically it's probably a winning position for for white I should say. Which means that rook f5 is not really a playable defense, so you really have to be brave and find a move of knight takes f2 in order to survive. And it's actually the only move for black here. One point to note is that knight d7 doesn't work anymore, because after rook takes d7, well, they don't have queen f8 because our rook is covering it. And if queen f6, we just play knight to e4, discovering check, discovering attack on the queen. And if queen d4, we just have this beautiful little sidestep with the move king to d8, where we break the pin, we force the trade of queens with rook c5, queen c5. And in the ending is just a very clear win with the 3 extra pawns being enough for even the most unskilled technician. So white should instead play a move king g2 and get out of the pin. And the position is still very complex, but at this point black seems to be okay in a couple of ways. The one I'd say is the most reliable is probably the move knight e4. The move rook f5 is admittedly not losing in that version, but knight e4 is a little bit better, because if white does play rook takes f6, then they run into the move queen takes b2, and it turns out we're taking the rook next turn that white just doesn't really have a good discovery with the knight to threaten mate, because black's always going to have some move like queen e3 or queen c3, and it turns out that black's attack on the white king is just going to be that bit faster than anything white can muster, as the engine will confirm for you. So a better move for white would be to play knight d3, and again, it's very sharp lines, but basically it comes to equality, or let's say dynamic equality, after rook takes f1, dealing with the threat to the rook, and then black again needs to be quite precise, so still the task is not over. The engine points out rook d7 as a playable alternative, but I like the move knight d2 best of all, with the idea that when they move their king, we block that c-file, and that more or less allows us to stay in the game, because knight takes c5 doesn't really help all that much after we just take back. Still the c7 square is covered, and the white king is still very exposed. So b3 is a better move to win the piece, but it turns out that black gets enough compensation in a few different ways, but I personally like the move of queen c6, with the idea that if they take the knight, we can take back, and that'll give us a nice discovered check on the king. So that's the deep idea of queen c6. And if they get out of the pin, let's say king to h3 or something, then yeah, it's a very complex position, but after b6, I think it should be about equal. For example, bc4, dc4. And I mean, it's probably going to end up being some kind of perpetual check, like queen e4. And I think once you start giving checks like knight c4, queen f5, and I don't really see a way for white to get out of the checks, because if you allow the rook to move to a square where the rook can attack with check, it's going to be a mating attack, basically. So there you have it. That's how to defend as well as how to play a winning chess tactic. As always, I appreciate your support and definitely would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, whether you would like me to do more videos like this one and what you really loved about this particular video. And also, yeah, if you are new to the channel, then do make sure to subscribe as well for more of my chess videos. It really helps boost the algorithm when you like and when you subscribe. So thanks for the support, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Get out of here.